All right. As you may be well aware of, there is an election this year, an important election. And recently, the group Writers held an auction, and some local, or not local, but some comic creators were involved. And I thought I'd, bring somebody on from the group to explain, the group and how they put together the auction and who they got involved. So, uh, I'll stop talking and I'll go ahead and bring in my guest.
Good morning.
Maybe I will. There we go. Hi, how's it going?
Hi. It's going great. Thank you so much for having us on.
And where are you from? And tell us a little bit about Vote Riders.
I am in California. Vote Riders is a national organization. We've got people all across the country, both staff and volunteers and partner organizations. And our focus is on helping voters with voter ID. So that is one of the tricky little things that voters run into, a barrier to casting their ballot. And for most of us, it's we, who are used to having an ID in our pocket. It's not so much of a problem to use that when casting their ballot, but there are approximately 25 million voting age American citizens who don't have a current government issued photo ID. It's about 11% of all told, but then it hits some communities much, much harder. It's about 1 in 4 Black Americans who don't have that current government issued photo ID. At the same time, there are 35 states that have a voter ID requirement. So that means that you have to have one of a specific list of IDs when you go to vote, whether you're voting by mail or in person. And confusingly, the rules are different in every state. They are different if you're voting in person versus voting by mail. And it's a total bureaucratic nightmare if you, for whatever reason, lost or had your ID stolen or let it expire or for whatever reason and need to get a new one. So we help people out. We provide things like rides to the DMV or the ID office that they need to go to. We provide assistance with things like getting birth certificates and other name change documents, marriage certificates, and up to and including, if someone needs it, legal assistance with all of that documentation, because it can be really logistically difficult, time-consuming, and expensive. And then there are, as many citizens who are just confused about voter ID, don't really know what's required. And so we provide a lot of voter education across the country on sort of what exactly you need.
Nice. And so, as I was saying before I brought you in, that you guys recently held an auction that involved some comic book creators. Can you tell, how did that come to be, and who participated?
It was just such a beautiful grassroots effort. Greg Peck has been a longtime supporter and friend of Vote Riders. He's been, definitely spreading the word about how important it is for people to get their voter ID. And then another supporter and friend of ours named Aaron McCall was also involved. They and a group of their friends got together after the passing of Ruth Bader Ginsburg. And they decided that they just really felt the need to organize something. They really felt like she stood for voting rights and they needed to do something in her honor. So they just built this from the ground up in about a week. It was wild. Wow. They got the word out to a ton of creators, a ton of artists, just so many great people, a bunch of authors and so on. And then really it was all self-driven, like people who felt compelled to participate and to just put up something from their collection on Twitter, and people just bid on it. It was like it wasn't hugely centrally organized, and it raised about $20,000. It was absolutely amazing. Yeah, over the course of a week. in what is an overwhelming week in an overwhelming year. And we just could not be more grateful to all of the artists, all of the authors, like everybody who stepped up to bid and to spread the word. And it was really exciting.
Now, so I just found out about it, excuse me, after the thing had ended. But I guess if for people who aren't aware, this is not the first time this year that artists like this have stepped up for and done auctions like this. I know back in the beginning of the year, I know some did I forget what the hashtag they used, but it was for local comic book shops to help and support them. So, I mean,
like Comic Writers Challenge or something like that.
Yes. Yeah. I think led by Gail Simone.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that was a huge effort too. And just really impactful. It really brought out a lot of support for local comic shops.
Mm-hmm. So what, how this is the money that, was raised from this auction. How's it, what are the, I guess, vague plans? I know you probably don't have specific plans for, what to do, but, what?
Oh, yes. We've got like 2.5 weeks left, right? So this is absolutely critical time. We've got to reach out to voters because of this massive problem with confusion about ID. So we are phone banking, we are text banking, we are reaching out through all kinds of venues to try to make sure that people understand what ID they need and that they know to come to us for assistance if they need it in any way. So we've got huge efforts to reach out to voters. We are providing rides to DMVs and especially helping people make appointments where they need those. There's limited time left to do that, right? Mm-hmm. We are helping people get to their local ID issuing office and then providing whatever assistance they need right now. Our helpline and Messenger, all the ways that we're helping people are just massively booming right now because people really are confused about what ID they need to vote.
And this map, which I pulled up on your website, is this, mm-hmm. I mean, these kind of look like swing states maybe? Or states, are those states that you're kind of focusing in on, or?
The red states are states that have a strict photo voter ID law. So mm-hmm. in these states, you must show a photo ID when you vote. Again, the rules are different if you're voting by mail. Mm-hmm. But this is for in-person, either early or on November 3rd. And in those states, if you don't show it when you vote, you need to come back to the elections office and show it in order for your provisional ballot to be counted at all. So those are what we call strict states. And then there are other states that allow for different options. Like it doesn't have to be a driver's license or a state photo ID. There are other options in the other states. Or they provide the option that you can sign an affidavit at the polling place or some other fail-safe if you have lost your ID or forgot it or it doesn't meet the requirements.
And are those like the blue states or the light blue states?
Yeah. So the color coding. So like Arizona, for example, is super confusing. Their law is very difficult, but at the same time, there are other options besides a photo ID that you can use. And most people, when they hear ID, they immediately think of their driver's license. But most states provide at least a few other options that you can use when you vote.
Now, given the current state of the, let's call it what it is, the pandemic. No beating around that bush. Have you guys seen like an uptick in people looking for information about mail-in voting or other means of voting rather than in person? For sure.
Yeah. People, the confusing part is that the rules about all the voting rules are changing so quickly. We can't go a day without a Secretary of State issuing some kind of new guidance, whether it's a change in the deadlines or a change in the rules about who can vote absentee. and so on. So we've been getting just a massive amount of questions of various kinds. We have a voter ID helpline that is 844-338-8743. People can call or text, and we will help them answer their questions. People can also send us chat messages. They can email us at info@votewriters.org. They can go to the website, like whatever questions you've got. And like some of the most common, of course, are about what if they need an ID, if they're mailing their ballot as opposed to voting in person. And those details are on each state's page on the website. Some states do require that that you enclose a copy of your ID when you apply to vote by mail or when you vote by mail. We're working with a great law firm to make sure that we can actually mail people a copy of their ID, because if they don't have a printer, that's a very hard requirement to meet.
Totally understand.
The pandemic has just made it so much more confusing for people, and it's made it harder for us to reach out in person. Typically, we'd be doing canvassing and tabling and lots of in-person outreach. So what we've had to do is really pivot towards phone banking, text banking, and just getting the word out however we can.
Now, I think you said that the auction was kind of started by the creators. Do you foresee something like this happening again? Let's say, before the election or maybe after the election.
There was already talk this. There were a few people who missed out on that particular round. It was sort of a lightning round of a week, So a bunch of authors, especially in the sort of young adults fiction space, were interested in. They're going to try to do another round of those auctions. So we'll get some more comic book artists and writers and some more authors to do some more items, but just before it all comes down to the wire on November 3rd. Although honestly, it's going to go on.
I was going to say, and then we wait for a month or so.
There will be runoff elections, right? Not every election is decided, on November 3rd. There will be runoff elections. There is a period of time where people will be trying to cure their provisional ballot by going back and whatever was wrong with their provisional ballot, whether they didn't provide ID or something, they need to go back and provide it. So there's a lot of mopping up after November 3rd.
Especially after this one, probably.
We'll see.
Hopefully not.
I expect so. But I know that there are millions and millions of election workers and secretaries of state and county election officials working really hard to make sure that it all goes as smoothly as possible.
So is there anything about the vote writers that maybe we didn't talk about that you wanted to mention? And before we wrap up, I'll give you a chance to give out all the information again, and I'll be sure to include it in the show notes. But is there anything else about the organization?
I can't emphasize enough for people to really understand, to be informed about what the ID laws are for voting in their state. There are 15 states where you don't need a photo ID when you go, or where you don't need an ID when you actually go to vote, as long as you're a registered voter. And there are 35 states where you would need to bring some form of ID. It doesn't always have to be a driver's license. It doesn't always have to be a current ID, but it's good to be informed. It's good to know. That way, if you meet a misinformed poll worker, or if you run into a friend who is misinformed, you can provide that information and make sure that everybody has their vote counted. So everybody, please share this information, get informed, make your voting plan, and make sure that your vote counts.
All right, now that we have the important stuff out of the way, are you a comic book person? Do you read anything? And if so, do you remember the first one you read?
Early on, I was a big. My grandma handed down all of her Archie and her Archie Veronica comics. She handed down all of her Donald Duck comics. And from there, it was an easy step into into all the superheroes, into Incredible Hulk. I was a big fan of She-Hulk back when that was a thing, but that was a long time ago.
Yeah. So
these days I read a lot of science fiction, and I every so often when I dust off the old box of comic books and bring them out for my 11-year-old.
So is there anything reading? It could be, novels or anything that you would recommend that people check out if they, have some free time or you need something to read?
Oh Lord, what have I like? It's the endless. I need light. I've been needing a lot of light reading right now because day to day, it's just so intense in this lead up to the election. So the last thing I really loved reading was called by Faith Hunter. It's called Junkyard Cats. She wrote the Jane Yellow Rock series, which is pretty good. Okay. It's not hugely intellectual, but it's very character driven, and I think she's a great writer. So.
Nice. Well, if you'd like to kind of give one more the links out one more time, then we can wrap this up, and I'll let you get back to helping people get registered to vote.
Yes. Well, not just registered, but also at this point, get your ballot in the mail if you're mailing. Yeah. Go early vote if you're going to early vote, and make sure you know where you're going to be voting and what ID you're bringing if you're going to vote on November 3rd. The helpline to call Vote Riders for any kind of question or assistance you need is 844-338-8743. The website is voteriders.org. There's all the information you can possibly need there. And again, if you've got additional questions, there's one of the most common questions we get, and one that I think people will hopefully be interested in, is that people ask us all the time if they're going to need a real ID, the official real ID to vote this year. They do not. There's no state that requires a real ID to vote, so please don't worry about that. Yeah, and then otherwise, just get in touch with any questions. We are here to help you make sure your vote counts.
All right, and do you have a Twitter?
Oh, yes. So we're at Vote Riders on Twitter and Facebook. On Instagram, it's at The Vote Riders. Okay. We send out a lot of great information on deadlines and stuff. Please follow us. You can volunteer if you want to do text banking or phone banking. We are going right up until the election, reaching out to people. We're reaching out to a lot of people who are really at risk of not having their vote counted because they lack ID. So it makes a big difference. It makes an immediate impact to volunteer. You can sign up to volunteer on our website.
All right. Well, I want to thank you for taking the time today to talk with us about this, important issue. And if you guys ever have another, auction that gets organized, let me know, and I'll help get the word out.
Yeah. Well, keep an eye on especially Greg Pack's Twitter feed. On our Twitter feed, we'll be announcing that any new auctions coming up will be on there. Any of the other creators who are involved, like Brian Michael Bendis and others, Aaron Cooter, and some of the other great creators who are involved the first time around.
Some real up and comers, I hear.
Oh man, did you see some of that? It was so beautiful. There was some original cover art for Guardians of the Galaxy. Wow, it was gorgeous.
All right. Well, stay safe and stay healthy out in California, and continue to do the good work. I mean, it's needed, and thank you for everything you do.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate being on here. You have a wonderful, wonderful day, and we'll see you on the internets.
All right. Catch you later.
Thanks.
Right.